Hey everybody, Alex Corey here with cultivatedchange.com. We are back with part 3 of our home workout series. Today we're going over legs. This is my least favorite day of the week. Like a lot of athletes and bodybuilders out there, the contraction you receive from your legs is usually so intense and the soreness so vicious the next day. It's more of an anticipatory thing. I just never look forward to the day after legs if you really focus in on and get as good of a workout as you would from back or anything else like that. We're going to spend an extensive time warming up, about the same amount of time you would normally, but I'm just going to throw a couple other exercises in there. There'll just be more to think about because there are so many little muscles in the hip musculature and just spread all throughout the upper leg that are often imbalanced from sitting all day. They're just either weak or overly tight, and most people will have a movement compensation of some sort. I have a bunch. I also have injured knees from high school and a lot of low back pain if I don't pay attention to do an adequate warm-up. So we'll go over all those compensations for most people. Our 3 main exercises are going to be a squat, of course, a deadlift, of course, and I chose a lunge as my third. It's a unilateral exercise, and it really allows you to focus on the muscular group you're going for based off the variation, whereas the squat and deadlift oftentimes are just focused on whole lower body musculature. It doesn't allow you to focus in on and feel contraction so much just because you have to move the weight, so to speak. If you're ready, let's get started. Okay, to warm up, we're going to do a couple exercises. Just going to start with some old-fashioned jumping jacks. It's pretty mild on the strain on the joints. Gets blood flow going to everything. Start stretching out those hip flexors, and then we're going to move into some high kicks or knee highs, depending on how you like to call them. Starting a little slow and then gradually increasing to like a jogging speed. About 45 seconds each, just to get, like I said, hips opened, abductors and adductors working, stretched out, blood flow in there, and then we'll move into some more straining exercises that put some more pressure on the joints. So let's start with the jumping jacks. Moving into knee highs. You can start just like this if you want, just to keep your balance. Just try bringing that knee as close up to your chest as you can, just to get that stretch going right here, and then move into more of a jog. Okay, for our next warm-up progression, we're going to do an exercise that you don't normally find a lot of people prescribing, but it's fantastic for warming up everything that we have to do with legs. I have knee injuries from high school years of tennis and cross country, so I have a lot of floating cartilage around there. I also tend to put a lot of strain on my lower back, just because I tend to do a lot of back-specific work. And if you sit all day, then your thoracic or your lumbar spine doesn't get a lot of movement, so it might be a little stiff. This will prime your entire posterior chain, which is your calves up to your hamstrings, glutes included, your entire hip structure, and your lower back, and a lot of your upper back. But there's a ton of musculature, just your entire rear musculature, that needs to be flexible but able to tighten for a successful leg day, just because you don't want the weight going forward onto your shins or knees. You want the weight evenly distributed so it's on the center of your body. So we're going to strengthen the back of our body so we pull as much as we push with legs. This is a quadruped piriformis stretch. We're just going to do the same position we did for a cat-cow the other day for our back workout. So hands under shoulders, knees under hips, and then you're going to do an alternating Superman. So pick whichever side to start with. I'm going to do left leg, right arm. And so push into the ground with the one you're not doing, and then just reach out. I did left leg, right arm, come back to center. I'm going to move up a little bit since I tapped the wall. And then the other side, that's right leg, left arm, come back. And when you do this, stretch. So you should be initiating from your butt. Brace your lower back so you don't end up rounding. So squeeze your butt and then just push out in all directions. So stretch as far as you can in both, and you should feel a decent contraction in your shoulder, your hip, and your hamstring. If you feel it in your low back, we can do some more lumbar spine exercises, but do this for as many reps as you would like to get warmed up. But you should feel a lot of pressure right here. Let me do it with the other leg. You should feel a lot of pressure all the way from your glutes down to your calf. Do that for as many as it takes you to get warmed up, and then we'll move into a slightly harder dynamic exercise. Okay, next in our series warm-up, we're gonna put progressively more tension on our legs. This is an adductor dynamic warm-up. So we're gonna move from side to side, never really returning to straight up and down, and this is just going to put a pretty good stretch on our adductors. They're usually tight if you're sitting. We'll do the abductors afterwards with a band. This one's one of my favorite. You can move as quickly as you want. You can put as much tension as you want. The one thing to point out, so you're going to start however far apart you need to. You're going to want your feet pointed out a little bit just because it's a little easier to push your knees out. You want your knees in the ending position, so this is the motion. I just have very long legs. You want your knees over your feet at the end, so the pressure when you finish is straight down onto your foot. And then move back over, straight down onto your foot, move back over. So you should feel this leg stretching, and you should feel a stretch here. So it's an adductor stretch, and this entire leg has to brace. So we're getting ready to put a lot of tension on the knee. You don't have to come all the way back up. You can if you want and go back down. To keep more stretch and tension, I just alternate and stay down. And you should feel the stretch move and then move back. And you'll feel it in all of your quad muscles as well. Do that for 45 seconds just to get everything limber. Okay, our next warm-up, and this will be our last true warm-up, and then I'll move into putting some tension on the legs, is going to be a glute medius and abductor, warm-up. I'm spending a lot of time warming up because there are so many small muscles in the hips and spread all throughout the hip musculature and legs that never get touched. It's like the back with all those little rotator cuff muscles and all the stabilizers. There's a ton of stabilizers in your legs, and most exercises only focus on your four quads and then the multiple muscles that make up your hamstring complex. For good reason, there's enough of them to worry about, but without working on all of the stabilizers in the hips, your hips just form all sorts of interesting imbalances that create low back pain, and half of your core is in your hips, so you need strong hips. Anyway, this exercise is going to be a glute medius. That's the side of your butt right there, very weak, so you'll notice that you'll feel this very quickly, or I do at least. This is a non-broken band, so I have one that's an actual piece. If you want to use the same broken band or a bungee, just hold the two pieces of it like this just to create tension, but I can do this with the band. It's very nice. And we're just going to do baby steps. So you're going to push out, not up, just out, come back, push, come back, push, come back, push, come back. Go the other way. And then as you feel this muscle working, you can go as fast as you want and take as big as steps as you want. You don't want to get a whole lot of momentum in here, so you don't end up swinging with your upper body. Keep your upper body stiff as possible and just feel your hip and the side of your leg push. This is easier to do in shoes, but I enjoy doing leg day and as near to barefoot or no shoes as you can, just so you can feel contact with the ground and make sure pressure is evenly distributed. Do this for, if you're gonna go side to side, you can do a game of just 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I have a very small space, but if you have an open space to do it in, you can get up to 10. And if you get up to 10 on both sides, your glute medius is going to be on fire, which is what you want. So you want to feel that muscle, so you feel it working in the rest of your exercises, so you know that everything is firing at once. If you don't have a band, this is the exact same thing as a leg raise. So the old-fashioned, like that, I find that's better because it has constant tension. And if you want to get the glute medius really working in this, up and bring it back without twisting your hips. So up and then bring your leg back and you'll feel it fire right there. Just do that for as many as it takes you to get tired. And then we'll move into our first real exercise. This is going to be one of your main leg exercises in your routine, no matter the routine. You can't get away from it. It's a squat, of course. So many variations to this based off of what specific muscle types you want to hit. You can target different parts of your quad. There's 4 quad muscles, which is why it's your quad. And you can tailor this to your biomechanics, to your proportions, as in how long your torso is, how big your femur is. I have a very large femur and pretty large torso, so a traditional squat puts a lot of strain on my lower back as I go down, just because my angle is slightly off. If you have a different posture, then it's different, but the traditional way to do a squat is going to be feet forward and then come down. If you have no muscle imbalances, that's great. I don't see anyone doing that ever. It's not the best to be able to load weight, and you can usually involve a little more of your hamstring complex and your glutes to help you if you turn your feet just a little out. So 20 degrees or so, not here, out here. So the basic premise is just slow down. I'm putting my hands in front. You can do a bar squat. For at home, using dumbbells and just learning how to do the motion, in front tends to be better. The center of gravity is closest to you and the weight is directly over your knees. With all leg exercises, lunge, deadlift, squat, your knees want to be as close to over your feet as possible. Meaning, the tendency is to have your knees collapse like this. It's called knee valgus. You don't want that to happen. That puts a lot of torque on your knee. If you have any previous injuries, you'll feel it. So by instinct, push out that way. When you come down, it'll get entrained and you won't have to think about it. But when you come down and then push back up. If you want, you can go a little wider than hips and you can just really sink in and feel a stretch down here. And for a better stretch, I just physically push my knees out and you will feel a whole bunch of muscles on your inside of your leg straining against that. And that's not a bad thing. You're opening your hips. This is what people mean when they say hip opener. This is a good hip opener. And then depending on how limber you are, how tall you are, what you want to work, some people go way below 90 degrees, down here, come back up. That works everything. That's a whole bunch of glute, hamstring. If you want to do the traditional quad and train yourself for a normal squat, 90 degrees is just fine. So you're gonna go down here. So your femur is parallel to the ground, back up and squeeze. This top, once you get to here, your glutes and hamstrings can kick in a little more, and you finish it off like a deadlift. If you just want to isolate the quads, here and here. Once you push forward, that's your glutes. I suggest full range of motion, so down, back, back. And when you're down there, a good key to think about for initiating is butt back first. So if you just drop your knees first, your knees are going to be way further than your feet. They will be further than your feet anyway, but this is going to put a lot more pressure on your knee than butt back first. So starts like you're lowering a deadlift. So butt back first and then down and back up. I exaggerated it. You want it to be a fluid motion, but just to show you, butt down. So when you do it at once, and down. My back is a little tight today, so there's going to be a little more arching. If everything is loose, your back will straighten out a little bit, but if it's tight, it wants to hold, and your lower back will end up arching. This is why it takes so much warm-up to be able to get there. But you can do that with body weight, as many reps as you want. I'm going to grab some 30s, and I'm going to grab a 30 and do some goblet squats, and then I'll show you the progression after that. Just a 30 pound. Feet proper. Another thing, make sure you brace on this, just so your lower back doesn't cave in at the bottom, and you want to keep your chest as up and out as possible. Don't let it cave forward. So this is called thoracic extension, thorax. So chest out, look up at a bit of an angle. So just find something to stare at just to keep your chest up, or else the tendency, if you have a lot of muscle imbalances like I do, is going to want to be to cave and go forward like that. Not a good plan. So stare up at something and just stay there. For breathing, take a breath at the top, brace your core. You don't need to be extreme, so you don't need to go, you will see people do that, but if they're lifting 400 pounds, that's different. So breath in. You can breathe normally if it helps, but it's usually breath in, hold the brace. Once you hit the bottom, start breathing out to generate force to get back up, and repeat. So like that. And then for the progression, if you have 2 dumbbells and you want to make it even harder and get a shoulder workout, I'm not going to be able to do a whole lot of these because they're hard and I'm tired. But put these on your shoulder just to make it so you don't have to balance any more than you were. Get your feet right. Slowly back up. and do that for as many. This should be your main exercise. We're gonna do deadlifts after this. You can do either or if you want, depending how tired you are. The deadlift is definitely more of a posterior chain exercise. All lower back muscles, glute focused, hamstrings. It does hit your quads as well and a lot of your upper back. So we'll go over that briefly. A lot of people split them up on days. It's just taxing your nervous system, but once you get accustomed to it, you can certainly do both on the same day. Okay, we are back with the king of all leg exercises. This is the deadlift. So this will be alternated, sometimes used in conjunction with the squat. In my opinion, the deadlift is the most useful exercise of all. Translates immediately to real life, improves overall strength, improves overall balance, everything. It is very good at revealing muscle imbalances, just like the squat, and it does require you to be very careful because there are so many joints moving. Not paying attention to any one of them can lead to potential injury, especially if you start using weight. So getting the form right is paramount on this one. Different types of the deadlift look a lot like the squat. The deadlift is first and foremost a hip hinge. So the squat concentrates on just going down, and it's more thought of as a knee extension exercise. So unbending your knees. The deadlift is a hip hinge, meaning your legs can remain completely straight and you can just hinge your hips like that. So a straight leg deadlift, you may see, is where you don't come down like this and you just bend your torso over and your hamstrings are going to feel a rough stretch. That's a perfect workout for hamstrings only and low back, ton of low back. If you're just learning a deadlift form and you want to try to avoid any excess strain on your low back, I recommend doing it either with body weight and just holding your hands at the side, or with bands, or if you do have dumbbells. This mimics the trap bar at a gym. So the hexagonal bar you stand in, you come down with handles, and you do that instead of having a bar in front of you. A bar in front of you is the traditional way. No real reason to do that if you're worried at all about low back pain or you're just learning form. So we're just gonna do it with dumbbells. And obviously these aren't a ton of weight. So if you're used to using a lot of weight and you're at home, just do them slowly or do more of them. They get just as hard if you're using strict form, especially if you're pausing. So you want your feet directly below your hips. Again, you can turn your feet out a little more. Multiple variations of this, depending on if you want to turn into a glute exercise or a hamstring exercise. The normal form of this uses everything, all the way from your lats, down your entire back, and all the way down your posterior chain, glutes, hamstrings, calves, everything. The only thing this doesn't work, and even then sometimes, is your chest, but everything strains if you get tired enough. So feet slightly angled out, 20-30 degrees, and that lets you squeeze your glutes, and you're just going to keep the weights in an up and down line, meaning you don't want to swing forward, you don't want them to go back. Keep them in a straight line. You're going to brace. First of all, put your shoulders back a little bit, so don't let your shoulders cave in. Shoulders back. Stick your butt out first, like the squat, and you'll start to squat down as far down as you want. If you're using dumbbells, here's about good. So just before your knees touch 90, or rather your femurs touch 90, and the weight is right over my foot, and then with your whole foot, but if you can, concentrate on your heel, push back up and squeeze your butt forward. So you're gonna do you're trying to clench your butt at the end. So it should be a bit of a thrust at the end. So butt back, down, straight, pause for a minute, and then push. And right about here, when your dumbbells cross your knee, you can start squeezing your butt. If they're in front for a traditional one, things are a little harder, your low back gets more involved. I would not recommend starting with that unless you want to get specifically better at that, especially if you've had any issues with low back pain in the past. So again, back straight, push your butt back, straight down. Trying to keep your chest out and up like the squat. Pause, push with your heels, squeeze your butt. Some people exaggerate that at the top just to make sure they're squeezing, so they'll go. Not necessary unless you want to make sure you're squeezing just to get the feeling, and then you can start playing with distances, how the angle of your feet. You don't have to do the entire rep range either. If you just want to practice that contraction, you can do that and just practice releasing and squeezing your hamstrings and your glutes. That'll strengthen that motion, but I would recommend doing a full range of motion when you're starting. And when you're doing vertical like that, traditional deadlift, your back should be straight, meaning you don't want a arch and you don't want a round. If you had a broomstick, you should be able to put the broomstick on your back and have it maintain contact with your butt and your upper back. So your back should remain in the same position angle-wise, as in there shouldn't be hunching and there shouldn't be extreme arching like that. It's okay to bend forward as long as that angle stays the same. And that can be all you do. That is a perfect leg workout for a beginner or anyone by itself. If you want something more, you're not done yet. You want to test yourself a little bit. I always say a unilateral exercise for last. That just means one side of your body at a time, or just one side and then swap. So it's either a single leg lunge or just a walking lunge. Anything where both arms or legs aren't working at the same time. So a lunge is my perfect one. It's great for people who have long femurs, where a squat or a deadlift is just nervous system taxing. Just wipes you out. You might not even have made a great connection, but just going through the motions is taxing. Lunges are definitely taxing, but I feel a great stretch and contraction doing these. I can focus on the muscles I want to work, and if you get good at them, you can increase weight quickly. The basic mechanic of a lunge is just going to be to keep your back as straight as possible. We're going to focus on just a quad-based lunge. There is a variation of this that works your hamstrings, but just for this video, I keep my hands like this, like a front squat, just to keep balance, because it is a little hard to balance sometimes. But basic premise is just step out like this. Your femur, if you want a full stretch, about 90 degrees. And notice that I didn't bring my knee out here. You want your knee as close to over your foot as possible, because when you do that motion, there's a lot of torque put forward onto your knee. So if you just want to practice doing that, that's great. The full movement is come back up and then do it. If you just want to hone in on the motion and getting the quad to fire, just do this. That is perfectly acceptable. Again, the most tension, keep your knee off the ground, so you have to balance. If you're just practicing, have that knee touch so you can be firm, come back up. Again, you want your back to remain pretty straight, just up and straight. If you have too much knee pain when you do that, and I often do, especially if I'm using dumbbells, do the reverse motion. This is harder because you're going in reverse, but it takes away some of that torque, so you just have to do it a little slower. And then just go back. However you are able to balance best. Some people can keep their feet normal, so there's a bit of a gap here. Other people find it easier to bring it back and your feet are more in a straight line, so your body is in a tighter position. Center of gravity is closer to you. whatever way you feel works best. Do somewhere from 5 to 20 of those and you'll have a fantastic stretch on your quads. If you need more, immediately accessible from dumbbells. Balancing will get harder, so make sure to really brace. And I find it helpful if I stare at one point, kind of like if you're doing a quad stretch and you have one leg up in the air. Staring at a point and then just focusing on bracing helps. But same motion, just forward and back, or forward and up and down. If you're doing this, make sure this front foot is doing the work, pushing and releasing, instead of having your back foot push you up, instead of having both feet jam together and that making you come up. That front foot should be doing the work. And when you're down there, make sure that all 3 points of your foot are touching. I often get caught up, if I'm just trying to come back up, with pushing my heel, because it's instinctual, because I always try to put more of the emphasis on my hamstrings because I have weaker hamstrings. But make sure your 2 points on your toe and your heel stay in contact, and you're pushing with all sides of your foot. And that is a perfect workout. Next video we do, which will be another step more advanced, we'll do Bulgarian split squats, which are a little bit harder, but an even better contraction, I feel. And until next time, enjoy that work. We made it to the end, everyone. Great job with that workout. Hope you enjoyed it. Just a reminder to like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know if you like this video and if you want me to keep doing future ones like this. There is still a core and probably a combo arms and shoulders video to do, and that'll round out all the major muscle groups for the home workout series. Also a reminder, we are still enrolling for our virtual health coaching and personal training sessions, or in person if you're in the Western North Carolina area, but we do accept clients from all over the country and the world if we match your style and you think we can be of help for you. Until next time.